You might have seen me install the ECS Tuning X-Pipe, and I've generally been happy with the way that sounds. However, I'm now installing a bigger turbo as part of my Stage 3 build, and I wanted a new catback. This is their non-resonated, valved catback. I'm hoping it'll create more of those racy notes and more pops and bangs and all that other kind of cool stuff. So we'll kind of see how it sounds after it's installed. If you're running your engine cover and the heat shield under it, it's time to remove it. The engine cover pulls right up, and then the heat shield will have 4 plastic little screws holding it down. We're gonna need to blast off the 2 top 12 mils on each side. Might be a little easier actually with just a ratcheting wrench. These things do get a little stuck on there, so just use your patience. At some point it becomes finger tight. You can just start to pull it out with your hands. Yeah, there's the first one. Now get the next one down there. And number 2's out. Be careful not to strip this. It is a little bit of a pain. You're gonna need to try a variety of wrenches to really get in there. I was able to get all 3 bolts off the passenger side. We can get the 3rd hidden one on the driver's side by picking the car up and getting rid of the belly pan. All right, we're under the car, and we've got to take off this section here with a T25. Got some push pins up here. Get them with this little pry tool or a screwdriver, whatever you got. I think there's still a few more in the front. So it was just actually 1 more. Now we've got to get that 13 millimeter kind of left of my finger that's holding up the downpipe. It's not very tight or anything, guys. It's just kind of hard to show. So here's what we took out of here. That's all it is, just a spring and a washer and a fastener. It's the same thing on this side. There's not much to show. Got the other spring, fastener, and washer. Now we've got to get these 2 bolts off that hold this hanger for the downpipe. It's an M10. And what this has done is given us more room to wiggle around. You're gonna need to get pretty creative here. It is not an easy fit, but essentially you really just gotta get the right length extensions. Don't fall, don't fall. There we go, got it. Under the car, before we drop the exhaust, we want to remove the connection to these active exhaust valves. You're gonna have 2 on both sides, and there's a little white tab that you need to pull out, push on it, and then pull back. It can be a little tricky because there's not a lot of visibility. And for the 2nd valve, it's actually right before the exhaust tip. It's not before the muffler. So in case you're having trouble finding it, it's right here. Take that connection off here too. Now I'm thinking we undo these clamps before my ECS Tuning X-Pipe. This part goes back towards the mufflers and exhaust tips, and I think we drop that first. Let's blast these off with a 17 mil. I've supported the bottom section of the exhaust with a jack stand here, and now we're gonna drop the exhaust hangers on both sides. It's just 1 13 millimeter bolt. It's right up here on both sides, very easy. Blast it off and the exhaust will come down. Be ready to catch it because it will fall. We're gonna stick our 13 mil up here. My jack stand is all that's holding the back of the exhaust now, so we're ready to lower it a little and slide it on out. I'm gonna undo this section here and pull out the ECS Tuning X-Pipe. My front pipes down from the headers are disconnected, as you saw earlier in the video. I put in the jack stand to hopefully hold them a little. I don't know how well it's gonna really hold. There we go, guys. The first pipe is off. And the second pipe is off. All we've got left down here is this ECS Tuning X pipe, and all we need to do is bust off this little rubber bush from the exhaust hanger and one more right up here, and it's free. I'm gonna try using this little Schwaben exhaust hanger tool. It looks a little flimsy, but maybe it'll work. Hey, it did work. Now I'm just gonna get the one over here. And it was similarly easy. I'm gonna take the little exhaust clamps off, and then I'm gonna slide this thing out. Now we can begin installing the ECS Tuning valved exhaust. Feed the X pipe in. And into our mount here. There we go. We can place on these mounts. We're not gonna screw them in yet. Make sure to remember to slip on some clamps here and then put the section in. Super easy. Might be a little bit of an alignment issue. Just work it a little till it slips on. Now we can just thread on this little bracket here. I'm not gonna actually tighten it, just thread it on a little so that these things are at least mated together. Now we need to transfer some hardware to the mufflers. You're gonna get some washers and some new nuts, and you're gonna take the old actuator off your original exhaust. And the main thing is you want this to match up with the spring. For example, in the closed position, you're not gonna get it to match the spring, but in the open position, it will, which is what you want. You wanna kind of peek, make sure the spring is seated. Now we can throw on our washers and nuts. And the torque on these is 3 Newton meters, so it's not very much. You definitely don't want to torque hard. Lubricate this. Now you can start to tighten the clamps down a bit. We're not gonna completely torque yet. What we wanna do is just start getting the exhaust to align. So we're gonna push up on things and just start to tighten a little bit. There we go. Not fully torqued, but gives us an idea of what things might look like. I still have the exhaust loosened. I do have new gaskets, and I'm gonna use the one that kind of captures the bolt. Hook my gasket onto the first bolt. That way it's not all completely dangling around. And then I'm gonna line up that first bolt with the first hole. And I wish I could really show you guys. There's just not a great way to get a camera in here. Okay, I got the first bolt through. Got to get the first nut on. This is probably a little easier due to the fact that I don't have the turbo installed. I'm probably cheating slightly. This exhaust combination does not have any studs. Instead, we have nuts and bolts. And that means it's going to be a little challenging. I've got all the bolts threaded in. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten those nuts. There's not much for me to show you guys. There's no magic trick to it. You're gonna have to get in there, find the right angles, and hit everything. I'm back under the car, start threading our bolts in. Now we need to get in there and connect these things right here. I really can't put a camera up there and it's not worth you guys seeing the back of my head. I've got the connections out to the transmission mount worked out, and I gotta say that passenger one was a real hassle. Torque down these bolts. We can start to reassemble the belly pan. And then there's just one more up here. Now I'm just gonna start aligning the exhaust so that I can pick it up a bit and reclamp everything, because the idea is for all of this to tuck neatly. I think the exhaust sounds amazing under throttle. It's way cooler than just the X-Pipe on its own was. I also thought that the welds were quite nice. The flapper valves are working as expected. I'm just overall super happy with the sound. I do think it's a solid setup, especially given the price point. The only thing that I didn't care for were the clamps. I do think it's a good idea to replace them, and I probably will, especially the exhaust tip clamps. Mine just really didn't seem to work. They would still rattle around, and I've heard that from a few people that theirs rattled. And then I tried going tighter and they just broke, so I ended up spot welding them. The other little nitpicky thing was that I couldn't perfectly align the driver's side exhaust tips the way that it's welded up and fitted. And I think there may be some need to maybe bend an exhaust hanger a little bit, something like that. I'll get in there and figure it out. It's just off by a hair, and when I was looking at other videos, it just seemed to be like that for a lot of people. As far as drone, I'd say it's maybe just a hair more than the X-Pipe. I think the install overall is pretty simple. People could do this on jack stands. The whole lift would make it way easier, especially when you're dealing with unhooking it from the catalyst, because you have to get way up there and unhook the mounts around the transmission. So with that said, I'm gonna leave you guys for a bit and I'll catch you again really soon. I need to get a little sleep.